Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. Before we dive into today's story, we just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you all for watching. We truly appreciate your support. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, it's totally free, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest stories. Now, with all that said, let's jump straight into the story.
The wind howled a mournful dirge through the skeletal fingers of the birch trees, clawing at Alara's threadbare cloak. She shivered, pulling it tighter, the damp chill seeping into her bones. She had been lost for 3 days, ever since she wandered too far from her village, chasing a particularly iridescent butterfly. Now, the butterfly was a distant, mocking memory, replaced by the gnawing pangs of hunger and the creeping tendrils of fear. Then she saw it. Nestled amongst the gnarled trees, half hidden by a veil of swirling mist, stood a house unlike any she had ever imagined. It perched precariously on 2 enormous chicken legs, their scaly skin a sickly yellow under the weak light. The windows were like hollow eyes, staring out with unsettling intelligence. Alara, desperate and shivering, stumbled towards it. Hope, fragile as a winter leaf, flickered in her chest. A voice, raspy and ancient, cracked the silence. "Who dares disturb Baba Yaga?" Alara jumped, nearly tripping. She peered around the house, unable to pinpoint the source of the voice. Finally, her eyes landed on the lock of the gate. It was a skull, its hollow sockets fixed on her with morbid interest. I am lost," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, can you help me?" The skull lock rattled, its bony jaws clicking open and shut. "Lost are you? And hungry, I wager. Baba Yaga is always happy to offer aid. But aid comes at a price. Turn your back to me, little bird, and speak your need. If you speak true, the gate will open." Alara hesitated. Something about the skull's unblinking gaze sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. But hunger gnawed relentlessly, and the promise of shelter, however unsettling, was too tempting to resist. She turned her back to the skull lock and whispered, "I am Alara from the village of Sylvanbrook. I am lost and hungry, and I need help finding my way home." The skull lock rattled again, then with a groan of rusty hinges, the gate swung open. Alara, her heart pounding, stepped inside. The house spun around, settling with a jarring thud. A door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior reeking of wood smoke and something else. Something acrid and unsettling, like burnt sugar and old bones. An old woman sat hunched over a massive hearth, her back to Alara. Only a few wisps of greasy gray hair escaped her knotted shawl. The air around her shimmered with an unseen energy. "Welcome, little bird," the woman croaked, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "Come closer, warm yourself by the fire. I am Baba Yaga, and I have been expecting you." Alara approached cautiously. Up close, Baba Yaga was even more unsettling. Her face was a roadmap of wrinkles, and her nose was so long and hooked that it almost touched her chin. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp, predatory glint. "Thank you, Baba Yaga," Alara said, forcing a polite smile. "I am very grateful for your hospitality." Baba Yaga chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Grateful indeed. Sit, little bird, sit. I have broth simmering and fresh bread cooling. You must be starving." The broth, thick and meaty, arrived surprisingly quickly, along with a slab of dark, slightly sweet bread. Despite her unease, Alara ate with ravenous hunger, the rich flavors warming her from the inside out. As she ate, Baba Yaga watched her with unsettling intensity. "So, little Alara, you are lost and wish to return home." A simple task for Baba Yaga. But as I said, aid comes at a price. Alara swallowed hard. "What price?" Baba Yaga's lips stretched into a thin, cruel smile. "A service, just a small one. I need a little help tidying up. Nothing a strong, young girl like you couldn't handle." Alara, relieved, readily agreed. She spent the next few days cleaning Baba Yaga's house. It was a grueling task. Piles of dirty dishes threatened to topple over, cobwebs hung thick as shrouds, and the air was thick with dust. She scrubbed and swept, polished and dusted, until her hands were raw and bleeding. But with each chore, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She found strange herbs drying in the rafters, strange implements hanging on the walls, and a disturbing number of bones scattered throughout the house. Mostly animal, she hoped. One day, while cleaning the hearth, she unearthed a small, intricately carved wooden doll. It resembled her perfectly, down to the color of her hair and the pattern of her cloak. A cold dread washed over her. She understood now. The tidying up wasn't just chores. It was preparation. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She lay in the tiny, uncomfortable bed, listening to the wind howl and Baba Yaga's rhythmic snoring. She knew she had to escape. Quietly, she rose, grabbed her cloak, and crept towards the door. As she reached for the latch, a voice, sharp and cold, cut through the silence. "Where do you think you're going, little bird?" Elara froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She turned to see Baba Yaga standing in the doorway, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. I was just going for a walk," Elara stammered, her voice trembling. Baba Yaga's smile widened, revealing yellow teeth. "A walk? In the middle of the night? Don't lie to me, little bird. I know what you're planning." Elara knew she was caught. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the worst. Then she remembered something her grandmother had told her. Never trust Baba Yaga, but if you must, be cleverer than she. Opening her eyes, she looked at Baba Yaga and said, her voice surprisingly steady, "You said the gate opens only if I speak true, didn't you? Well, it opened because I was telling the truth then. Now let's see if it still works." Without waiting for a response, Elara turned her back to Baba Yaga and shouted towards the door, "Baba Yaga is a kind and generous woman who has taken me in and is helping me find my way home. I am her grateful guest and I would never think of escaping." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a protesting groan, the door swung open. Elara, her breath caught in her throat, bolted through it. She fled, her feet barely touching the ground. The image of Baba Yaga's enraged face burned into her mind. She didn't stop running until she saw the faint glimmer of familiar lights in the distance. Elara made it back to her village, forever changed by her encounter with Baba Yaga. She had faced the witch in her walking house and lived to tell the tale. And though she never chased another butterfly again, she learned a valuable lesson. Even in the direst of circumstances, a little bit of cleverness can be more powerful than magic. And sometimes the truth, cleverly spoken, can be the strongest weapon of all. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The wind howled a mournful tune around the small, whitewashed cottage nestled in the heart of County Clare. Inside, Mary O'Malley stirred a pot of stew, the aroma doing little to chase away the chill that had settled deep in her bones. Her husband, Liam, a man built like the ancient stone walls that crisscrossed their land, sat by the fire, his brow furrowed with worry. Their son, Finn, had been away on the fishing trawler for a week, longer than usual. Storms had lashed the coast and no word had come through. Each crashing wave sounded like a fist against their fragile hope. Suddenly, the fire crackled and spat and Liam looked up. But it wasn't the fire that caused the shift in his expression. His eyes were wide, his lips slightly parted. "Mary," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the wind. "Do you hear it?" Mary strained her ears, listening for the rhythmic roar of the ocean, the bleating of the sheep in the nearby field, anything familiar. But all she heard was a high-pitched, keening wail, a sound that clawed its way into her soul. It was a sound unlike any she had ever heard, a lament that seemed to echo from the very depths of the earth. "What is that, Liam?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the window. The wind rattled the glass panes and the wail intensified, a haunting cry that sent shivers down Mary's spine. It wasn't just the wind, this was something else, something ancient and terrible. Liam swallowed hard. "It's the banshee, Mary. The bean city." Mary's heart lurched. She knew the stories, whispered in hushed tones around the fire, tales of the spectral woman who cried before a death in the family. She had never believed them, dismissing them as old wives' tales. But now, listening to that chilling wail, clinging to the wind like a mournful shroud, she couldn't deny the dread that tightened its icy grip around her. "No, Liam, don't say that," she pleaded, her voice choked with fear. "It's just the wind. The storm is playing tricks on our ears." But Liam shook his head, his face pale. He rose to his feet and walked to the window, peering out into the swirling darkness. The wail seemed to follow him, a constant, agonizing presence. "She's calling for Finn," he whispered, his voice thick with grief. Mary rushed to his side, clutching his arm. "Don't say that. He's strong, Liam. He knows the sea. He'll be back." 4 hours they waited, listening to the banshee's lament, a relentless soundtrack to their growing despair. The storm raged outside, mirroring the tempest within their hearts. Each gust of wind, each crashing wave, seemed to carry the spectral woman's cry closer, louder, more despairing. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in hues of gray and bruised purple, the wail finally subsided. The wind still howled, but the keening was gone, replaced by a deafening silence, a silence more terrifying than any sound. Liam turned to Mary, his face etched with grief. "She's gone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The next day the news arrived. The fishing trawler, caught in the heart of the storm, had capsized. All hands were lost. Mary stood on the cliffs, the wind tearing at her hair, the roar of the ocean a constant reminder of what she had lost. She gazed out at the turbulent waters, her heart a hollow ache. The stories were true. The banshee had wailed for Finn. And now, the echo of her lament was forever etched into the landscape of Mary's memory, a chilling reminder of the price the sea demanded, and the ancient, mournful presence that foretold its cruel harvest. From that day forward, whenever the wind howled through the hills of County Clare, Mary would listen for the keening, a constant reminder of the night the banshee cried for her son. The sound would forever be a part of her, a symbol of loss, and a testament to the enduring power of the ancient tales whispered in the heart of Ireland. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The salt spray stung Ailsa's face as she wrestled with the rigging. A storm was brewing, a black beast gathering teeth on the horizon. The sea serpent, her father's small fishing boat, bucked and groaned beneath her feet. Old Man Finnegan, her father's first mate, muttered prayers to the saints under his breath, a rosary clicking nervously in his calloused hand. Ailsa wasn't afraid of storms. She'd weathered dozens with her father since she was a child. What truly chilled her wasn't the wind or the waves, but the whispers that haunted the coastal villages, whispers of the Nucklavi. The Nucklavi, a skinless horse demon fused to its rider, rising from the depths to poison the land and spread pestilence. A creature of nightmare, born from the darkest corners of the sea. Ailsa had always dismissed it as an old wives' tale, a story to scare children into obedience. But tonight the storm felt different, ominous, pregnant with something unholy. As darkness swallowed the sea serpent, lightning ripped through the sky, illuminating the churning water. Ailsa gasped. She caught a glimpse, a fleeting image etched into her mind with terrifying clarity. A form, immense and grotesque, rose from the waves. A body like a horse but devoid of skin, its raw muscle pulsating with a sickly, phosphorescent glow. Atop this horrific beast sat a humanoid figure, equally flayed, its sinews twisting and dripping with brine. Its single, burning eye, wide and malevolent, fixed upon their boat. Ailsa scrambled back, a scream caught in her throat. Old Man Finnegan, already pale, collapsed to his knees, muttering faster now, his rosary beads flying. Her father, a man weathered like the sea itself, stood frozen at the helm, his face etched with disbelief and terror. "The Nucklavi," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's real." The creature roared, a sound that tore through the wind and vibrated in Ailsa's bones. A wave, impossibly large, slammed into the sea serpent, throwing her violently against the mast. When Ailsa regained her senses, she found herself clinging to a splintered piece of wreckage. The boat was gone. Her father and Finnegan, she presumed, were gone too. The storm raged around her, but the Nucklavi was closer. She saw it again, its single eye burning like a malevolent star. It was stalking her, circling in the water, its gnarled limbs moving with unnatural speed. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but Ailsa remembered her grandmother's words, whispered on stormy nights around the hearth. The Nucklavi thrives on fear. It draws its power from despair. Ailsa took a deep breath. She refused to succumb. She wouldn't give the creature what it wanted. Thinking quickly, she remembered another old tale. The Nucklavi was repelled by pure, flowing water. It couldn't stand to cross a stream. But the sea was its domain. Then she saw it, a small, almost insignificant detail in the chaos. A cluster of seaweed clinging to the wreckage. Seaweed, still damp from the rain, still infused with the fresh water that had fallen from the sky. Desperate, Ailsa grabbed the seaweed and hurled it at the Nucklavi. The effect was instantaneous. The creature recoiled, its roar turning into a piercing shriek of pain. The water around it roiled and churned as if scalded. It flailed wildly, its single eye filled with a frenzied terror. Ailsa scrambled further onto the wreckage, gathering more seaweed, throwing handful after handful at the retreating demon. The Nucklavi, repelled by the fresh water, sank back into the depths from which it came, its shriek fading into the roar of the storm. The storm eventually subsided. Exhausted and battered, Ailsa washed ashore on a deserted stretch of coastline. She was alone, mourning the loss of her father and Finnegan, but she was alive. The whispers of the Nucklavi still haunted the villages, but now there was a new story to tell. The story of Ailsa, the girl who faced the skinless horse demon of the sea and survived. A story of courage in the face of unimaginable horror. A story that proved, even in the darkest depths, a sliver of hope, like a strand of seaweed drenched in rain, could banish the nightmares back to the sea. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The wind howled a mournful dirge, tearing at Alara's cloak as she trudged home through the darkening forest. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and impending snow, a scent that usually brought a sense of comfort, a promise of quiet solitude. Tonight, however, it felt heavy, laden with an unspoken dread. Alara, a woodcarver known for her whimsical creations, had stayed late in the forest, chasing the last of the daylight to finish a particularly intricate owl. Now, the encroaching night felt less like a welcome embrace and more like a predator stalking her. Suddenly, the wind intensified, whipping through the trees with a deafening roar. A flock of crows, startled from their roosts, exploded into the sky, their caws echoing through the woods in a discordant chorus. Alara instinctively pulled her hood tighter, a primal fear prickling at the back of her neck. Then she heard it. A low, guttural baying, followed by the thunder of hooves on the frozen ground. Not the rhythmic clop of a single horse, but the frenzied, chaotic gallop of many. The sound grew closer, impossibly fast, and Alara knew with a chilling certainty that this was no ordinary hunt. She scrambled behind the thick trunk of an ancient oak, her heart hammering against her ribs. The earth trembled as the wild hunt tore through the forest. First came the hounds, spectral wolves with eyes that burned like molten gold, their howls laced with an unearthly sorrow. Then came the riders. They were a terrifying spectacle. Gaunt figures in tattered cloaks, their faces obscured by shadows, riding skeletal steeds that spat fire and left trails of frost in their wake. Some wielded spears of pure ice, others carried rusted scythes gleaming faintly in the darkness. Their leader, a towering figure shrouded in black fur, possessed eyes that pierced the very soul. He was known by many names: Odin, Wotan, the Wild Hunter, but tonight, Alara knew him only as the harbinger of death. The hunt swept past her, a whirlwind of spectral fury and icy wind. The air crackled with an energy that felt both ancient and malevolent. Alara held her breath, praying to any god who might be listening, praying she wouldn't be seen. As the last of the ghostly riders disappeared into the swirling snow, silence descended, heavier and more oppressive than before. Alara slowly emerged from behind the oak, her legs trembling beneath her. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and decay, the ground littered with frozen leaves and broken branches. She knew what the wild hunt signified. It was a warning, a harbinger of hardship, of loss, of death. It meant a hard winter, a failing harvest, perhaps even war. Driven by a newfound fear and a desperate need to warn the villagers, Alara stumbled through the forest toward home. She had to tell them. They had to prepare. But what preparations could one make against the icy grip of fate? When she finally reached the village, the first snowflakes had already begun to fall. The villagers were gathered around the hearth in the town hall, their faces etched with worry. A sickness had been spreading through the village, claiming the old and the weak. Alara burst into the hall, breathless and wild-eyed. The wild hunt. I saw the wild hunt. Her words were met with a mixture of disbelief and fear. Old Man Hemlock, the village elder, stepped forward, his face lined with concern. Alara, child, you're tired. Perhaps you dreamt it. It was no dream. Alara insisted, her voice trembling. It was real. They are a warning. We must. Her words trailed off as she looked around the hall. The sick coughed weakly, their eyes glazed with fever. The faces of her neighbors were drawn and weary. A sudden realization washed over her, cold and stark. The wild hunt wasn't just a warning of future doom, it was a reflection of the present. The sickness, the fear, the despair, they were already living the nightmare. Alara looked down at her hands, calloused and worn from years of carving. She couldn't stop death. She couldn't ward off the hunt. But perhaps she could offer a small beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. She straightened her shoulders, a newfound resolve hardening her gaze. We can't stop what's coming, she said, her voice now clear and strong. But we can face it together. We can care for the sick, share our food, and offer each other comfort. We can remember the warmth of the summer sun and the hope of the spring to come. We can keep the light alive even in the darkest night. And as the snow fell harder outside, Alara knew that the true battle wasn't against the spectral riders of the wild hunt, but against the fear and despair that threatened to consume them all. The hunt might foretell doom, but it was up to them to decide how they would face it. They would not succumb quietly. They would face the darkness with courage, with compassion, and with the unwavering belief that even after the harshest winter, spring would inevitably return. The owl she carved, still nestled in her pack, suddenly felt heavier, not with wood, but with a fragile, precious hope. A hope that perhaps, even in the face of the wild hunt, life could still find a way. Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.